Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, and glad you're back with us again this week. Got a good one for you today. I'm going to be joined by Cindy Patterson. She's a homesteader up in Saskatchewan, Canada. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing about her homestead and all the things that she's doing up that way. I hope you've been watching the Mother Earth News online summit this week. It's been, well, I'll be honest with you, there's been a few that have been really, really good, and there's been a few that's just, in my opinion, been okay, but well worth taking the time to sit down and watch some of them. There's been a couple in particular that I thought were just excellent, and it's been worth watching. If you still haven't signed up for that, you can jump in now and still watch the ones that are left to watch, and there's going to be some encore presentations at the end. You can just go to smalltownhomestead.com/homesteading summit, and it'll take you to a landing page there where you can sign up and get in and watch a few the last few days of the presentations. It's been really good. There'll be, like I said, some opportunities to watch them, other ways you can watch at a later date in case you're listening to this podcast when it's all over. But yeah, it's worth checking out. I think you should go and check out what's going on at the Mother Earth News Online Summit. I'll have a link in the show notes for that as well. You can check out. And with all that, let's just go ahead and jump right into the interview with Cindy. It's kind of a long interview. We had a nice long chat. She had a lot of stuff going on her homestead, and we had a good conversation. So let's just head on over to that interview. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Cindy Patterson. Cindy's homesteading in Saskatchewan, Canada. And Cindy, welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
Oh, great, thanks.
Would you just take a couple minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started homesteading?
Well, we kind of actually started a little slowly at a time. We started out with moving to the farm about 3 years ago for there's a husband's family farm, so we moved out here. They had cattle and the garden, of course, but our youngest child is our son. He couldn't have cow's milk, so we were buying goat's milk, and it's very hard to find, and it's expensive. And my husband said to me, "Why on earth are we going to all this trouble to have to drive an hour and a half and try and find this goat's milk and not be able to find it when we have a farm? Why don't we just buy a goat?" So I was like, well, I don't know. Why don't we just buy a goat? So we bought our first couple goats and started milking, and we thought, well, hey, this is pretty handy. And then after that, we started doing a little more research on other animals and things, and thought, we want to know what's in the food we're feeding our kids and where it comes from, and know that it's something healthy. And we had decided that we were going to, try and produce as much as we could. And then, but there was 3 shopping trips in a row that we went, and we got home and had all our groceries put away. And a couple days later, found out that one of the things that we had bought was recalled due to, contamination or whatever. Oh, wow. It was 3 times in a row. So after that, we were like, you know what? Instead of shopping and spending all this money and then, having to find out that it's been recalled because it's contaminated or there's something in it, let's just produce our own food. So kind of went from there.
Yeah,
so,
it's a common story. Everybody wants to know what they're eating for some reason. I don't understand it.
That's right. And, we started, and it's kind of one of those things that I always tell people that, we talk to a lot of people about homesteading. We say it's very addicting because we started with 2 goats, and now we have 10 goats and, 20 cows and a milk cow and chickens and quail and rabbits. And once you start, you just you can't stop.
Yeah, you had a little bit different gateway animal. I think it's usually chickens, but yeah, goats works too, right?
I know, yeah. Usually it is the chickens, but yeah, we start with the goats, and we love it. And, we get the kids involved, and it's nice to have a meal, and you look at your meal, and you know that everything that's there you've produced, and you know what's in it, and you know that it's healthy, and you don't have to worry about it making anybody sick or having chemicals in it. So we're really proud of that part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's the cause of a lot of problems in the world right now, is just the way the food is. And yeah, I agree with you. If so many people would just start thinking like you're thinking and grow their own, I think things would be a lot better. I think it'd be a lot better for our healthcare system and everything else. So
definitely.
Yeah. Well, would you tell us a little bit about your homestead? I mean, the layout, or how many acres you have, or what are you doing there?
Well, we're a little unconventional in the homesteading world because we actually we're on my husband's family farm, so they actually are grain farm and cattle farmers to begin with. So we have about 700 acres of land that way. But the actual homestead part itself, we have about 80 acres, I would say. So we do have a bit bigger of land, and then we probably have about 40, 50 acres of pasture land as well. So, yeah, so we're not, as small as most homesteaders, but, we're lucky to have all that extra space so we can everybody free range and pasture and all that sort of thing. So
of the part you're using, is it a lot of it pasture, or is it wooded, or what?
Well, up where we are up in Saskatchewan, we don't have we have woods, but it's not like what most people think for forest kind of thing. Like we call it bush up here. So we do have some bush around, but for the most part, it's just flat, open, kind of meadowy kind of land.
Great for livestock then, for sure. Huh?
It's great for livestock, yeah. Not so good for, getting wood for your wood stove, but it's, we have a lot of poplar up here, and white poplar is okay, but the black poplar is not so good for burning, so... So we have to look a little harder for our wood. Yeah.
Now, so you're doing goats and what else did you say? Cattle.
We have beef cattle, and then we just got our first milk cow about 2 months ago. So we're very excited about Miss Maggie. She's got a boyfriend coming here soon, so then we'll hopefully have some milk in the next year. And we have. What else do we have? We have rabbits, and we have chickens, of course. We have quail. We had some turkeys, but turkeys were just not our thing. We tried turkeys a couple times, and they just about drove us crazy. So I'm just as happy to get turkeys from, and a couple other homesteaders that we know of that are really good at it. So
I'm hearing that from other people, too, about the turkeys. That's surprising. A little surprising to me, but yeah.
That was probably one of the lessons that we learned kind of early on, was that you can't do everything, and that's okay. We tried to do everything, and it was like we're just not good at some of these things. And, there are people that are very good at it. And so you build up that community of people that that do what you can't do or what you don't want to do. So.
Smart, yeah. So many people there are a lot of people who do try to do everything, and it just doesn't work, and they get burned out. And yeah, it's a smart thing just to rely on other people to do the things you don't want to do or aren't as good at or aren't set up for, and it takes a lot of the pressure off, for sure.
Exactly, and it's nice because you meet a lot of like-minded people that way, and we've got quite a good system of quite a few people that are also homesteading or at least living a little more sustainably, which is what we kind of aim for. So we do a lot of trading back and forth, or we'll buy from them, they'll buy from us, kind of thing. But yeah, so it makes it kind of nice because they can specialize in what they're good at, and we specialize in what we're good at, and everybody's happy. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your chickens. How are you raising those? You free ranging them, and you rotational grazing? What are you doing there?
We have three. Right now, we've got 3 pens set up for our chickens. So we've got everybody takes turns free ranging, and we only let them free range in the afternoon when we're going to be around, just because we have a lot of foxes and coyotes around. Yeah. And actually, we just lost about 10 chickens about a week ago to the foxes and coyotes. So we're very careful to make sure that we're around when they're free ranging, because we do like to let them free range. But for the most part, they have a big kind of a pen, so they do get to go outside and check out the grass and eat, and they get a lot of kitchen scraps and that sort of thing. And then once a day we let them out to free range, and we kind of alternate that so that everybody doesn't get mixed together.
Yeah, everybody likes the glamour and the idea of free range until half your flock gets picked off by something, right?
Exactly, yeah. And we had a skunk in the yard, so we had everybody locked up for a bit till we managed to relocate the skunk, because otherwise we would have had skunk snacks. So we kept everybody locked in, but they still do have a pen. Like, they're not in little cages, and they're not, they're happy. We always say happy chickens make good eggs. So
so just layers, or you have meat chickens also? Or?
We have a little bit of both. This year we didn't have quite as many meat chickens. It just it was a little bit chaotic this year, so we didn't get quite as much done in the meat chickens. But we do have barred rocks, and we have some Orpingtons, and then we have just your ISA brown, your basic brown chicken. And what else do we have? We have some Australorps, and we kind of have a variety. We like all different color. We like the rainbow eggs, the kids call them. So they like to see, who's laying what color, and so Americanas, that sort of thing. So
yeah. How many birds do you have?
Right now, I think we're up around that 80, 90 mark.
Oh, wow.
We at our top, at the highest, for laying birds, we had about 160. And then, of course, some got eaten, and some were getting old, so they, of course, go in the soup pot. Nothing gets wasted. That's one of our things. If you stop laying, you make really good soup stock. So you go in the soup pot.
You got a whole different retirement plan for them, right?
That's right. Well, we always say that animals that live on our farm, everybody's here for a purpose. We don't we don't sugarcoat it, and we don't tell the kids, oh, this is just a pet, and whatever. Everybody's here for a purpose, and we just make sure that they have a really good life, and that they're well looked after and loved while they're here, and so that goes for our pigs and everything. So
that gets overlooked so much. I mean, I know people who have actually got into homesteading just for that very reason. They hate the unethical treatment of animals, but they're meat eaters, but they want to make sure their animals have a good life while they're here, and they want to raise them right, and they just hate the idea of them being cooped up and shoulder to shoulder in a barn for their whole life, or something like that. So they want to give those animals an ethical life. So I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, all of our animals, like, our goats, they free range a little bit too. They have an area that they go around, and we just let them wander around the yard and eat. And, the females we keep for milk, and the males that aren't going to be breeding go for meat, and they end up, we say they go to freezer camp. So they do that. And, we try to involve, for us, it's a very family oriented thing. We involve our kids in everything, the butchering, the raising, the, cleaning, the cooking, like everything. We want them to be involved and to understand where their food comes from. And, we always visited the farm, and the farm was always part of, obviously, their lives, but not so much with the animals. And so when we started doing this, it really, we've noticed changed. They don't seem to waste as much food, and they seem to eat better. And it's almost like, people come over and they're like, this is the chicken, we raised this, and we help mom and dad butcher. And it's like, they're proud of it. And, that's what we want, is them to have a pride in their food, and to know that they had something to do with it. It wasn't just handed to them. I remember our oldest daughter, she's 15 now, and when she was little, we said something about, eggs, and she said, well, Mom, I want the real eggs that come from the carton. And I mean, we live, my husband, his whole family's farmers, and we're like, how did this happen? How did our child not know that eggs don't come from the carton? They actually come from a chicken, not just, they don't just appear in the store. Right, yeah.
Unfortunately, there's probably some adults that think that.
That is very true, yeah. And, it's sad that that's the way our society's become. We've become so detached from the way we look at our food, and we don't actually put a lot of thought into it, which is sad because, even we have a huge garden and we just started our orchard and, the kids are just involved in everything. And I think that's so important to have your kids involved.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll talk about your garden and your orchard here in a minute, but I'm interested in what kind of rabbits you're raising. You said you're raising rabbits too, right?
We are. Well, we started with some lion head, just, my daughter wanted a pet rabbit.
Yeah.
And we ended up, now we've got kind of some cross of, I think we got a little New Zealand in there, and we got some, I don't even know what kind. I think we have a little bit of everything kind of crossed up in there. So
mutt rabbits.
The one
best kind.
Yeah, we got a little everything rabbits is what we call them.
Yeah. And quail also though, right?
We have quail. Yeah, we've got quail, and so we use them for eggs, and then of course the little boys that don't lay eggs we eat. So we started those about 4 months ago, I guess, and they've been quite a nice little addition. The kids really like them, and they just love that they have these little tiny eggs and that they're kind of, my son calls them, kid size.
Yeah, are you cage
they're
raising?
Kid size birds.
You raising those in cages, or how are you raising those?
They are sort of in a cage, like they're in a cage, but it's quite a big one, and they get the grass and stuff. But just because the quail can fly straight up, so they would be gone if we didn't, have them sort of contained. So they have a little bit of almost like a chicken tractor kind of deal.
Yeah,
so we move it around, and they get to eat some real grass and check things out. But of course, now we're getting cold, so now we're going to build them a pen in the barn or a cage of some sort in the barn, because it gets pretty cold up here, and they probably wouldn't last very long outside in the snow and cold. So
you ever had a problem with any of them like flying up and like breaking their necks on the top of the cage or anything?
We actually didn't, and we were new to quail, so we didn't know a lot about them. But then after I read, the cage was quite tall. And then after we learned that, we shortened it. So they've got a little bit, like it's longer and shorter, so they can't fly as high. So, because I was like, oh, these guys are really good at flying. And my husband's like, are they supposed to do, are they keep bouncing off the roof of the cage? Are they supposed to do that?
Yeah, I've heard of them breaking their necks like that. And a lot of people put like netting above there instead of a fence across the top. They'll put like some kind of a netting across the top to keep them from doing that. But then I think maybe they can get hung up in the netting too doing that. So they're tricky.
Yeah, and we just bought them and thought, hey, these are neat. Let's try these out. And then, like you said, after we had them all set up, we're like, oh, look, they have so much room. And then we're like, oh, let's maybe shorten that just so that we don't have that happen.
Right,
so thankfully, we did not run into that problem.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of livestock. You guys do your own processing, or you take it someplace?
We do. So we do, like our chickens, we do ourselves. Our beef, we sometimes slaughter them here, but then we take them in to be processed. So we just don't have anywhere to hang them, and they need to hang them for that, to cool. The pork we're going to do ourselves, and then of course we hunt as well. So anything that's hunted, we process ourselves. So
yeah, now that much, of course, you're selling this. It ain't all for you. You got a lot going on there. So I mean, how you selling?
Well, we do sell some, but you'd be surprised. We have 4 kids, and then my husband and I, and then my father-in-law also lives here. So we go through a lot of food. So we do keep quite a bit, but we do sell it. We sell to, we just kind of put it out there on, we have our Facebook page, and we're working on a website right now to, help with that a little bit. And it also helps to kind of offset some of the costs of processing and, feed and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so. Sure. Yeah, I know when we were growing up, it's like we would raise like 3 hogs or something, and we would like sell 1 and keep 2 or something like that, just to kind of offset the feed costs and things. Yeah, you definitely, you're not going to make a pile of money, but even if it helps to just pay for yours, that's every little bit helps. So sure. Well, yeah, you definitely got a lot going on there. What kind of hunting do you do there? You got the just deer hunting or?
Well, up here we have, so deer is right, coming up here. They've had muzzle loaders been done, and then my husband does bow hunting as well, and that's passed. And then you put in, you can be drawn for moose and elk and mule deer and that sort of thing. So we haven't been drawn the last few years, but my husband's family is actually is native, so they can hunt anytime. So they've been good about, sharing a little bit of moose with us. So we've been lucky that way. Yeah. Otherwise, we just, we have deer, so we get deer, and then of course we haven't been brave enough to try it yet, but we've been trapping beaver. We have a beaver problem here where we have kind of an overabundance of beaver, and they're just completely desiccating any forest, wood, bush land that we have. So they actually have a bounty on them right now where you trap them and then you can turn the tails in for some money. So somebody told us that, you should try eating beaver, but I just can't quite get there yet. I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, I would be. I've never eaten one, but I guess I probably would if somebody knew how to do it right and, knew a little bit about it.
I think, yeah, definitely. I think that if somebody, told me or cooked it and, I would try it. I don't know what to do with it. And
Right. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So you guys have some water on your land then if you got beaver out there, right?
We have quite a bit of water, actually. The last 2-3 years has been very, very wet around here. So we've actually had flooding going on around here, like flooded roads. We've been kind of, almost stranded where we are. The roads have been flooded over, and we've had to drive through fields and things to get out. And so with all that water, of course, the beavers have just multiplied like crazy.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they actually had like a beaver, like a derby kind of thing around, and they've got this bounty on them now just because there's just so many of them.
Pelts worth anything up there? Or?
The pelts are. I don't know personally. Like we haven't found anything to do with the pelts. I would like to, but I know there are some trappers around that do take the pelts and sell them. And I don't know if it's a lot, but they are worth a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've always heard. Yeah, I've never done anything with them either. We have them around here, but not like you guys have them, evidently. Yeah.
Well, I think the guys, like my husband and my father-in-law, they set up the traps, and the kids help. And I think they've got about 7 conibear traps, and then they've got 4 conibear traps and about 7 or 8 snares they set, and they usually catch about 2-3 a day. So.
Oh, well, good skill to have too. Anyway, for the kids to learn for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and our daughter, one of our middle daughters, she's hilarious because she's right in there like a dirty shirt, and our son, he's 4 and he, come on, Grandpa, let's go check, see if we got a beaver.
Yeah, exciting.
They're right in there, and we have to tell them, okay, when you go to school, maybe don't tell the kids that you had, we're chopping beaver tails off, and you might scare some of the kids.
Yeah. Well, is fishing a big part of your homestead too then? You got a lot of water there, so.
Well, we have water, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of fish in it. So we do really like fish, but we would have to travel, where we are, we would have to probably travel about half an hour, 45 minutes to get anywhere that has, fish worth eating.
That surprises me. Just assumed up there you'd have some really good fishing opportunities on your property.
Well, up north more they do, I think, but down here, we do have some lakes around that have some good fishing, but personally, you can stock your fish ponds, but they're more for, of course, for, looks and for entertainment. I mean, you could fish them, but not nearly as nice as the ones that are out there, in the wild.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear about your garden a little bit. What's going on with that?
Oh, we actually, I have a huge garden, and my father-in-law, he's had a little garden in it, for years, and before that, his mother had quite a big garden in it, and so when I got here, I mean, this garden's been here for years, so we've just kind of build up the soil, because of course, after all those years, it's starting to get kind of tired, so, we've been hauling in mulch and manure, and if there's one thing we have, it's a lot of poop. So we've been putting a lot of poop out there and, some compost and that sort of stuff, just to try and build up the soil. But, we grow potatoes as a big crop. We had a huge potato crop this year. We planted about 400 hills of potatoes, and I think, we'll be eating potatoes for the year at least. Wow. So we've got, potatoes and a lot of our root vegetables, like carrots and beets and things, those do really well, and onions and, cucumbers and lettuce. And it was actually a good garden year this year. Last year wasn't so good, but this year was really good. So, the pantry is full and the the cold storage is full, so I think we should be good going into winter.
Yeah, yeah. You don't utilize any season extenders like greenhouses or hoop houses or anything like that?
Well, my husband actually just built me a greenhouse this year, so now we're quite excited about that. We're gonna try and plant a few things in there just to try it out, because it gets so cold here in the wintertime that we got to play around and see how we could keep it from freezing. Because I mean, of course, we get up to like -40, -50, up here, which I don't know the conversion, but is very cold.
Yeah.
And all the people around here that have been around for years, and we call them the old timers around here, keep telling us that it's going to be a very, very cold, long winter. So we're going to play around and see what we can make work in the greenhouse, and have some fun with it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're set on food for the winter. You should be all right there.
Yeah. So we've got the vegetable garden, and then we started our herb garden, of course. That. We've got the herbs in there, and then we've got our little bit of orchard that we've kind of started. So we're trying to be able to produce as much of our own that we don't have to buy as possible. So and then of course we forage in there as well. That helps to kind of offset a little bit. So some of our berries and herbs and that sort of thing we forage for.
What do you have in your orchard? What are you growing there?
We have apples, and we have plums and Saskatchewan berries, and we tried planting blueberries, but I don't think our soil is quite acidic enough for them.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they're there, but they're not really doing anything. So we got to play with those a bit, and we've got something called a Hascap berry. Now, I don't know if you guys have those down there, but
I've never heard of one.
They're kind of like a blueberry, but they're bigger, and they were made, for our climate kind of thing. So we've got those. We got a few grapes. We've got raspberries. What else do we have out there? Oh, pear trees. So a little bit of, kind of everything.
Yeah, a lot going on there. Wow, it sounds like you guys have taken some major steps to self-sufficiency and down that path, because you guys got a little bit of everything going on. You pretty much got your bases covered all the way around, don't you?
Well, that was kind of our, we kind of, after we tried to do everything and realized that was not working, we sat and thought, okay, so what are the things that are important, and what are the things that, we really want to concentrate on, and so that's kind of where we went from. That was to try and have everything have a purpose. And so, we focused on the vegetables that, we use, and, the meats that we use, and the herbs and that sort of thing. And yeah.
I'm curious about your preservation methods for all this food. I mean, you got a lot going on. Or you just freeze it, or do you do a lot of canning, or?
We do a lot of canning. I spend probably the good portion of my summer, me and my stove, we're very close in the summer. And so we can probably from, I would say, the end of May, beginning of June, all the way, up to just last week, I was still canning the last of my, some beets and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We do a lot of freezing, of course, but we try not to freeze too much, because of course we only have so much room, and with the meat, all our meat and stuff, we put a lot of that in the freezer.
Sure, yeah.
So we do also a lot of dehydrating and drying, canning, pickling, freezing, and then we have a really good cold storage room. So we, all our potatoes and like some of our root vegetables and our pumpkins and that sort of thing just get put in the root cellar for the winter, and they keep really well, and we're very lucky. So, carrots and stuff.
Yeah. How long will they keep down there?
Well, we were actually eating carrots last year right up until May. So yeah, we were really lucky right up until almost like we were ready to start eating from the garden. So we had about a month and a half, 2 months where we didn't have any carrots left.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, that's real convenient. Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing with the potatoes. They lasted right up until about a month before, actually, I guess it was probably about 2 months, because the potatoes took a little longer to grow. But, so really we were quite happy with how we had for storage. And what I did last year was I just kind of kept track of what we had put up and how much we had put away and when it ran out, so that we knew for this year going in how much more we had to put away and how much more we needed to, plant and that sort of thing, just to kind of play with it. So,
do you have anything else going on as far as growing anything, or any other homesteading ventures you're taking on?
Well, we've started now. We also I make our own soap, and we spin. The other homesteading friends of ours have sheep, so we get some wool from or some fleece from them, and we've been spinning, our own wool, and of course then I sew and knit and all that, and with the soap, and we do a lot of making our own cleaning products and. With our herbs and our foraging, I also do some of our own medicines and things like that, for cold season and teas and all that sort of thing. And so we do that. And I bought 2 years ago, I bought my washboard, which my husband thought I was absolutely crazy, but I don't use it all the time. I said, I'm not going to, there's 7 of us. I'm not going to wash all our clothes with the washboard, obviously, but I do, get out the washboard and use it for, some of the sheets once a month, get a good scrubbing. And, if we have stain stuff or, we went camping and everybody laughed at me when I brought the washboard, but they weren't laughing when I was washing the tea towels.
That's right.
And we didn't have to, go into town and pay to do it. So,
well, and the thing is about anything you have like that. I mean, it's nice to know how to do it and to have the things to do it with, and doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. Exactly.
And, we're just trying to, kind of do the things that are interesting to us now and, explore and that sort of thing. Last year we put in our wood stove, which we got, a wood stove that we can cook on and we use for heat. We're collecting wood, and we're kind of working on learning to cook on the wood stove, which is a totally different, thing from cooking on electric, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, we really enjoy, our main goal is to, teach our kids to be more self-sufficient and to know where our food comes from. And, and now we're started to share these ideas and, ways that other people can homestead and, just help other people get started, because it's such a fulfilling way to live. It's
sure.
It's just so much more fulfilling than buying everything out of the store and spending all your time on the computer or on, the TV. I'm not saying we don't watch TV or play on the computer, but of course, we're outside more and, doing things as a family more. And we just, it's such a wonderful way to raise kids and have a family.
Yeah, I love that what you're saying there about, reaching out to others. I mean, I've been talking to everybody I've talked to just about has made comments like that we're trying to reach out and convince others that this is just a better way to live and it's healthier and it's just, just a better lifestyle. And I just find that with most homesteaders I talk to, that they really do have a heart to spread that message, because so many people have forgotten this way of life that they just don't know what they're missing.
Exactly. And I think that, one of the things I always say is that I think that in society's quest to simplify life, we've really actually made it much more difficult and taken the simplicity away. Things were simple. We just made them difficult. There's nothing, more simple than going out in the morning and collecting your eggs and, coming in and making your eggs for breakfast. I mean, that's simple. Having to go to the store and shop and grocery shop and, nobody raises their food anymore. I mean, that's not simplifying life. That's just, to me, making it more complicated. And, I think you feel more empowered knowing where your food's coming from.
Sure, yeah. Well, I love it that you're reaching out and trying to not only just have an impact on your own family, but impact other folks as well. I think that's great. Like I said, I think that's important. I think it's what we all need to do. I just think it's just better for the world as a whole. We are truly in the midst of a health crisis. We're in the midst of many kinds of crises really in this world, and a lot of it is around food and lifestyle and chemicals and just all the things that seem to be taking real root in this world. And, homesteading has the answer to a lot of those things.
Exactly. My husband and I were talking, and I said, when I was a kid, I mean, you heard about people who had cancer, but I didn't ever actually know anybody who had cancer. And I mean, now, I don't have enough fingers on my 2 hands to list the amount of people that I personally know that have or have died from cancer.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that's not something to do with what we eat and what we've done to our food and what,
Sure.
how we treat our food. It's got to have something to do. There's got to be something, that's a connection to that.
Oh, I believe that. Well, if you listen to my podcast, well, I believe that because I've been affected by it, and I absolutely think it was from food, and I, to be honest, the doctors even said that when we were talking about it, that was probably the cause of it because, just had a lifestyle where I was eating a lot of junk food and it can definitely have an effect on you, but
well, for sure. And I mean, it's nice to have the option to know what you're feeding yourself and to know what's in your food. And the one thing that we try really hard to do is, there are people around in our area that are very adamant that GMOs and spraying your crop, it doesn't go into the food and it's good for you and it doesn't hurt you and whatever. And the one thing is, I have my opinion, you have your opinion.
Yeah.
And I will share my opinion, but I'm not going to belittle you or make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about or make you feel bad because that's just making people more hostile and they're not going to listen.
Right.
If you're that saying, you get more flies to sugar than you do to vinegar kind of thing. So if I share my opinion and am open to your opinion and we're kind of sympathetic to each other and you're considerate to people, then you're more likely to get somewhere and be able to teach people.
And what I've said to people before is, I believe the human body's pretty tough, pretty resistant towards problems. But by saying that, I mean anything in moderation, our bodies can probably deal with. But the problem is nothing is in moderation anymore. It's in everything, and it starts accumulating and causing some real problems, I think.
Oh, for sure. Like for our bread, I generally make our bread. I mean, there are times I buy bread. I'm not saying I don't ever buy it. You're in a hurry, the kids are going 5 different directions or whatnot,
sure.
And so we buy a loaf of bread. But why is it the bread you buy in the store can sit 2 weeks in the bread box and not go bad?
Yes,
but the bread that I make from scratch after 3 days is kind of going moldy.
Yes, I made that exact same point on a podcast one time. We make our own bread, and it doesn't last very long, and the stuff from the store does. You're absolutely right because it's loaded with preservatives. That's why.
Exactly. Bread was not made to last 2 weeks without going bad. That's just
And it's like that with everything, and it's just everything is made for shelf life these days for the profit end of it, and those preservatives and stuff. I mean, like I said, I think you could probably handle quite a bit of that, to a point, but it's just we're so hammered with it in everything now that. Yeah, I think it's you got to try to break away from some of that, And I'm, when I see somebody driving to a fast food, drive-through or something to get some food, it doesn't bother me. I just think that if you do that all the time, you're going to have problems,
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we not that we don't ever eat out or we don't ever eat, a bag of chips or whatever, but it's not an everyday, and it's more of a, every once in a while. The kids go to birthday parties. I'm not going to tell them they can't eat those because that's not whole foods, and it's, that's not realistic. And I think you got to set your kids and people up to, to something that's, realistic and something that's sustainable and something that, you can continue with, right?
Yeah, like if you can't, it has to be attainable. It has, what you're trying to do needs to be something you can actually do. It's very difficult to basically go cold turkey from all store-bought products and everything else. It actually is a hard life for anybody, even somebody who set up with 700 acres, right? I mean, you take the average person in a town. I mean, they can't come close to that. They have, but there are some things they can do for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's the key to it is you need to make it so that it's feasible. It's something that can actually be done. Otherwise, you're just setting people up for failure and setting your kids up for failure, So that's kind of, what we do is just try and teach them and show them, what's right. And this is what we do here. But, I mean, if you go to your friend's house and, they offer you a a hot dog or whatever, yeah. By all means, have a hot dog with your friend.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about it too. That's exactly the way I feel about it. You like you said earlier, you're going to turn more people off with the wrong attitude about it than if you just be nice and it's okay every once in a while to do those things but yeah, just don't make a lifestyle out of it. I think that's the key.
Exactly, and I think we'll hopefully build up more of a community that way, and that's kind of our goal, and we're working on right now getting a website and a blog going so that we can share some of these things and hopefully get more people, because not only is it make it easier to homestead and to live this life, but it's more fun. It's always more fun when you have somebody you can talk to and they don't look at you like you're crazy because you're out there with your washboard washing your towels once a month.
Sure,
but people that actually think that what you're doing is okay.
Yeah, a lot of people admire it and say, I could never do that, though. There's a lot of people that say that. And then they don't have to do everything. They just need, just if we can convince people to do something, just a little bit of something get started. And like you said earlier, it is addicting. You start doing one thing and you find you're doing another thing and another thing, and it's an addicting lifestyle. It really is. For
sure. And, one thing that I say in in talking to people and trying to convince people to do this is you don't have to live on 700 acres. You can live in town in an apartment, have a pot on your deck with a tomato plant in it. You're homesteading,
Right.
Choose to maybe hang your towels on your balcony instead of putting them in your dryer. Shop at the farmer's market at the very least. Support the farmer's market and buy local food and food that, has maybe been raised a little more, and take the time to talk to the people who are producing your food,
Yeah.
It's things as simple as that. You don't have to, be like us where we, can everything and raise everything and cook everything from scratch, and you don't have to be like us. You can start so small and simple and still make a difference in your life and the environment and everybody else,
I think you're absolutely right. I think those little steps that people can take could just make a huge difference if the majority of people would start doing those things. Absolutely.
Oh, definitely. And that's kind of our hope, is that we can share and turn people on to this way of living, because it is so rewarding, and not just in our children and watching our children be happy and know where their food comes from and be proud of their food and proud of hunting with dad and that sort of thing, but just to know that hopefully when they grow up and have kids that they'll pass that on to them as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's some good advice for folks that are getting started. You're saying even if they live in an apartment or whatever, that's really good advice. I'm glad to hear you say that, because, and I find that, that most people, even when they have big acreage and they're doing everything, they realize that not everybody can do that, and yet they still understand that there are things that other people can do, especially in a community of people. You get, 20 different people doing 20 different things and then sharing with one another, and then everybody has a little bit of everything. So I think I like the community efforts that are being made in some places too, like that.
Yeah, me too. I was like, for me, community makes it so much more worthwhile and makes it so much more, fun and interesting. And you learn, because, it doesn't matter. Even when I'm, God willing, 80 years old and have been doing this for years and years, I still will not know everything.
Sure.
And so there's always going to be somebody that I can learn from. And if there's ever a time when I know everything and I can't learn, then I better be a very rich person and, be worth a lot of money, because I know everything. So,
there you go.
That's one of my philosophies, is that, I will. And I love to learn, and I love to listen to people. And there's always a different way of doing things. Just because I do it this way doesn't mean that there's not another way that maybe works better, or that also works. So
right.
You can always learn, and that's part of the fun too. So if you have a community of people doing all different things, or doing even the same thing you're doing, you're still going to learn and be able to enhance your skills and make it better.
Oh, I agree. Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of things right there, and I think that you guys probably are doing more than anybody I've talked to so far, as just a broad scope of homesteading activities. I mean, you really got a lot of things going on there. It surprises me that most of that, like you said, is really just for your family. But you have a big family, but you got a lot going on there for sure.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's addicting because we started small and it just kept on going, and we're just going to keep on going with it. We've got plans. We've kind of made some plans of what we want to do, and so next year we want to hopefully add in a smoker for smoking some of our meat to help preserve it that way, because that'll help. And we got the greenhouse now, so we're going to add in that a little bit. Keep working on the orchard. Just things like that.
Yeah, just little things, one thing at a time. Sure.
Exactly. We're working on a little bit more permaculture now too, in the garden and with our other garden beds and that sort of thing. And I mean, obviously right now we're trying really hard to get ready for winter, which is a whole long big list, and trying to get it all done before the snow and the cold gets here. But
yeah, it's a major event where you're at, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's when you're preparing for it cold. It's as cold as we get, you have to make sure, that you have the feed put up for your animals, and you have bedding, and they have somewhere warm to be. And, like we have to put the straw over top of our herbs and our strawberry beds and things like that. Because, I mean, otherwise they would freeze.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Get the wood cut and stacked for the fireplace and all that sort of fun stuff, which I'm sure you're doing down there too. So.
Yeah. Indiana gets a fair amount of, where I'm at, we get a fair amount of snow, and it gets pretty cold here. Nothing like what you probably laugh at us for it, but it's bad enough. It's as much winter as I want.
Yeah, well, and that's how it is, right? Like, I mean, what's cold to us? And I mean, we laughed because we went down a couple of years ago to Las Vegas in February, and people were walking around with parkas and toques, and we were like t-shirt and pants, and we were like, what are people doing? And everybody's looking at us like we were crazy. But I mean, it was like a spring day to us.
Yeah, I took some trips down to Florida, and that's the way it is down there too. In the wintertime, you go down there, and they're dressed up like they're freezing to death and running around in tank tops or something. Like, what's wrong with you people?
Yeah, exactly. They were like, well, we only have one pool open, but you probably don't want to swim. We're like, oh no, we'll go swimming. It's fine. And they all looked at us like we were crazy, but
yeah, that's why I like talking to people in other places. I'll talk to people who are in climates that are year-round growing, where it's warm all year round, and then talking to folks up in your way that you guys have some pretty harsh winters up there, and homesteading is different for everybody, and you just got to take what you have, the climate you're in, the land you have, and do the best you can with what you have. Exactly,
for sure, and and that's kind of what we try to share on the Facebook page, and what we're, like I said, trying to work on building up. So, yeah.
Well, I won't hold you up any longer. Where can folks get a hold of you online and see what you're doing?
Well, right now, all we have is Facebook, so people can find us at Homestead Therapy on Facebook. So that's our Facebook page, and they can find us there. And we are hoping in the next month or so to have a blog and a website up and running, and to be able to share some of our recipes and some of our tips and tricks and different ideas and ways that people can get started, or can like I said, even in a city, can homestead and not feel quite so overwhelmed, because I think that's the biggest stumbling block for people. Is it can be overwhelming.
Well, I think that's great what you're doing, and I'll put a link to your Facebook page in the show notes. And when you get that blog up and running, you let me know, and I'll add that to the show notes of this podcast.
Thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you, and look forward to listen to your podcast some more, because it's my driving music. I put it on and listen to it while I'm driving. And
I do the same thing. I have a bunch of favorite podcasts, and I just listen to them while I'm driving all the time, and that's how I get all my information too. But I'll definitely be looking forward to talking to you some more in our Facebook group at the Homestead Front Porch. You're pretty active in there, and I love how you're always posting things in there and getting involved in discussions. So I really appreciate that too.
Well, thank you very much for starting it. It's wonderful. You're a great source of information as well. So
yeah, it's been a great group. There's a lot of people in there who've really stepped up and helped other people out in there and answer a lot of questions. And I'm just glad to see people who are new to it asking a lot of questions too. That's always nice to see people not afraid to ask and try to get some information.
Yeah, and that's one thing I found about people that do homesteading, is that the majority of them have the mentality of being very helpful and helping any way they can, and let me give you some advice and try this. That's one of the things I love about it, is because everybody seems to have that mentality of, sure, you ask a question and everybody's going to hop in and give you an opinion.
Yep, I've noticed the same thing. I think it's great. I think some of the greatest people on the planet are homesteaders. It just seems that way to me. So for sure.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, it's been good talking to you, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Perfect. Thanks very much. We'll be chatting to you on Facebook.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, listening to that chat I had with Cindy. Boy, she does have a lot going on there. You heard her say early in the interview that no one can be 100% self-sufficient without community. And, she's right, but I'll tell you what I said to her about they're doing more than just about anybody I've heard or I've talked to personally. They've got a lot going on there, and they've made some giant steps towards self-sufficiency, and I think their family's really blessed to have that land. But even if you don't have that kind of land, there's just so much you can do. You heard Cindy say it, even though they're on a lot of land. I tell you that every week just about, and I'm not on a lot of land, and there's just so much you can do. There's so much I have left to do here that I'm not doing yet, and so many folks would tell you the same thing, that don't have a lot of space to work with. But I hope you got a lot from that. I hope it gave you some inspiration and perhaps maybe some goals to aim for. And you can go to Cindy's Facebook page at Homestead Therapy. I'll have a link for that in the show notes. And also you can just jump into the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group, where all of these interviews have originated from here in the last few episodes. And you can jump in there and have conversations with everybody we've been interviewing here. So hope you'll do that. Hope you'll join the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. It is a closed group, but all you have to do to join is ask, and we'll get you right in there. Head on over and leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate that. There's a link in the show notes at the bottom. If you don't know how to do that, you can just click on that. It'll tell you how to leave a review. And we always appreciate hearing from listeners. So hope to see you in the front porch. And thanks for listening. And until the next episode, which should be just this weekend, I have one more of these interviews, and then we'll go back to a couple of topical shows after that, and then we'll just see where it goes from there. But until next time, happy homesteading, and God bless.
Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.